Should you, O sophisticated enjoyer of vanilla BattleBrothers, play the Hardened submod for BattleBrothers Reforged? Yes. Hello, hello, beautiful people of the internet. Though I have already provided an answer to the question posed by the title of this video, indulge me with an excuse to articulate, in one place, a highlight reel of my thoughts regarding the design decisions in Hardened that stood out to me that I just wanted to articulate my thoughts on, that I wanted to talk about. This video will not be a comprehensive review of the mod, nor will I attempt to proselytize you into playing it or just sticking with vanilla BattleBrothers or anything of the sort. Both are a lot of fun. Darkso, Lord Midas, Uber Bagel, Taro Eld, Enduriel, Pouman, and everybody else who contributed to the project, thank you for giving me a new way to play my favorite game. I will be giving some amount of negative feedback that I hope is taken constructively, and know that it is coming from a place of love. Yeah, a place of love. I was gonna add more. A place of love. My experience is limited to the Hardened submod specifically. I have not played base Reforged. That said, most of what I'm going to talk about applies equally to both. I'm going to be casting a wide net. Reforged is under active development. Some of this will certainly change. So let's get into it. Let's start with the things that I like. The nighttime reworks. Very small, but very good. The nighttime effect now provides a debuff of minus 10% ranged hit chance per tile of distance, instead of a fixed debuff. This is great. This is going to be a theme throughout most of my positive and negative feedback, but this plays into the tactical nature of BattleBrothers. It plays into the positional nature. The distance tile penalty being amplified not only makes sense because it's dark and you can't see that well, but it also makes it so that you want to reposition your brothers on the battlefield, which is wonderful. That sort of tactical play is great. Bandages. What they do on the battlefield is just good enough that you want to bring them. It's still conditional, it's still hard to do, getting rid of bleeds is important, yada, yada, yada. But the most important change, or aspect of that change, is that there is tension for bag slots. Now, some other changes play into that too. For example, pocket sand, pocket sand, pocket sand, pocket sand. However, in vanilla, you'd usually just want to have, especially in the early game, a pocket dagger and a pocket shield. And that's it. There you go. That's your full loadout. And that's fine, right? But creating other options makes for strategic tension, which makes for interesting decisions, which makes for fun and deep gameplay. Bandages, very simple, excellent change. The rework for Black Monolith, so good. That fight is hard as shit now, and I love it. It should be. It's always kind of bothered me that in vanilla, once you get the scaling, past a certain day number, I don't know which number specifically, I'm not gonna pull a number out of a hat, but after like 200-ish, after day 200, the largest tier camps that you find on the map are like a harder fight than Black Monolith. I feel like Black Monolith is the perfect fight to be the ultimate challenge. And in Hardened, it is. And I love that. It's very good. A lot of the injuries that were reworked are good. As an example, just because this one sort of stands out to me, injured shoulder. The way it works in vanilla, sure, it might be realistic that with an injured shoulder, you can't run as well. All right, fine. I can accept this. That makes sense. However, limiting injured shoulder to just actions you take with that shoulder feels more intuitive from a gameplay perspective. So all of the subtle changes to injuries, pretty much without exception, I think are excellent. Well done. Gear progression is much better in Hardened compared to vanilla. In vanilla, let's be real, your endgame gear for a lot of your bros, you kind of get off Brigand Raiders. You can take a nasal helmet and a leather lamellar all the way to Black Monolith, and you're golden. You're set. You're fine. You pick up Nimble on that brother, and that's all you ever need. That's really not true for Hardened. There are premium pieces of gear that you get from enemies that aren't named gear at different weight values, and they all apply to different brothers for different types of builds. Brilliant. It's great, right? I think that level of like steady increases in power and decisions you have to make around it are excellent. Giving all humans recover. Wonderful. This is sort of saying recover's a bad perk in vanilla, because it is, and that's fine. Giving all humans the ability to use recover encourages using fatigue-intensive skills, which does give more player choice, which makes for more interesting strategic decisions. Great. I think this is just a good change. The crowded mechanic, also good. It takes the penalty from using reach weapons or pole arms when an enemy is adjacent to you and sort of amplifies it into a way that really makes sense. It makes you reconsider your own formation, little small moves that you do as a player, even for moving around your own bros to maximize your hit chance. Very good. I didn't always play around it super well, especially early on when I was playing with Hardened, but as I got more comfortable with it, I started to keep it in mind as I was positioning my brothers on the battlefield, and it's good. It's a good mechanic. A+. The rework for dodge. Ooh, this is so good. So good. This is my favorite perk rework. Whether it's strong or weak, who cares? It plays into how you position your squad. Wanting to keep hexes free around dodge bros means, one, you don't want that many, because close formations are generally better, and two, you want that bro to be limited in their contact with the enemy. You can build an offensive brother who just takes dodge and wants to stay out of harm's way. Great. You can build a brother that way, and should, and the build is enabled by that perk. Realized potential. It's fun. It's a big cost to take a cripple or a beggar, and having them realize their potential to just gain a ton of stats and be an effective fighter is totally fine, totally worth it. I think this is okay if it's overtuned, because by the time you reach level 11, you know, you're sort of pushing the endgame content anyway on all your brothers, and so it's fine. It's totally fine for this to be overpowered by a little bit. I think it probably is. That's great. All right, so now I'm going to talk about some things that I'm not sure if I like them or not, but I still have some thoughts on them that I want to share. Reach. Like the mechanic of reach. It's fine, but it seems to me that it still needs a bit of tweaking to get it right. It would be nice if there was some sort of subtle communication to the player, either in the combat log or even like visually when an attack happens, whether it was done with reach advantage or not. I wouldn't know at a glance if I had reach advantage against an enemy, because I'd be like, I don't know, do they have duelist? Let's see, how much is the this weapon? Oh, okay, that's a reach of 5. Wow, that is 5. You know, that kind of thing happened to me pretty often, and it's a lot more complicated than it is in vanilla of just spears get plus 20 hit chance. Speaking of, because of the changes to reach, sort of a side effect, but also as a side effect to other changes, spears just suck now. They just suck. Spear wall is just garbage in Reforged, and spears themselves are just sort of weak. That's a shame. It really is. The faction overhauls. So right now it's limited, I think, to just brigands, ancient dead, and noble armies. There are so many different units, and it feels imperative to memorize which units are at which power level, at least to get a feeling for if a camp is safe to bust or not. Obviously that's just sort of like a barrier that you have to get over, and that's fine. You know, it is manageable, but you know, I'm gonna put on screen just the unique units for Ancient Dead and Brigands, And like, look at them. Those all have different names. Those are all different types of units. Sometimes you look at an enemy camp and you see like a huge long roster, and it makes the at-a-glance decision-making a lot more difficult. It feels like that could be pulled back a little bit, simplified a little bit. One really nice side effect, though, of those reworks is that the upper and lower versions of units have been, removed. That's good. Some of the things from vanilla in that regard were bad, and I'm glad that Reforged is fixing those. Perk groups in general, it is cool for different backgrounds to have different identities more than just their stats. But one of the problems I have with it is that like some perk groups are just always going to be better than others once you get familiar with the game, even if things are reasonably balanced. Some players are just going to have preferences for certain ones where you're going to shy away from building that interesting diverse squad like you do in vanilla. Colossus being nerfed is good, except that Colossus isn't available for most brothers, and your brothers are going to be walking around with really low HP, and I'm going to talk about this more in things I don't like, but the reality is you end up with brothers who cannot build cohesive defensive packages, and they're always super vulnerable to something in a way that makes it so that your strategic options are super limited. And speaking of strategic options being super limited, this may as well go in the things I don't like category, but I understand why the change was made, and there is a part of it that I do like. Pathfinder not being universally available to all brothers. Pathfinder's a good perk. It's probably too good. In vanilla, I'm going to take Pathfinder on 11 out of the 12 bros out of my squad, at least, every run. So, I understand that it feels like a perk tax, that you have to take Pathfinder, and it is a good design decision to take away perk taxes. The problem is that in most of the fights in this game, when you are on any terrain other than just like plains and badlands and roads, your strategic options for where you can move a brother are extremely limited. When I'm playing in vanilla, when I have Pathfinder on my squad, as the enemy is approaching, readjusting, moving units from one side to the other, shoring up my defenses on the part of my formation where the Orc Warlord's coming, or things like that, I will be making all these subtle adjustments. And those subtle adjustments are an important part of skill expression in vanilla BattleBrothers. And that's gone. And that's not good. What's the solution? I kind of feel like humans should just get Pathfinder. Kind of like they got Recover. And that would be a good change. My heat just kicked on. I gotta turn that off. All right, so now let's talk about things that I just straight up don't like. We're gonna start with things that I don't like in vanilla that I'm shocked were not changed in Reforged. How in the world did vision radius and discoverability radius not become normalized into just a 1-to-1? It's unintuitive. Why can I see terrain and footprints further away than I can see a giant black monolith sticking out of the ground? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Legendary locations are used by players as a benchmark, even just like internally, not even comparing players to players, who cares? For your own sense of progression, you might say, all right, I want to clear Black Monolith by day X, with conditions Y. But if you can't find Black Monolith because you just happened to barely not see it, even though it looks like your vision radius went over where it would be, you never even get to test against yourself. And that sucks. That sucks. There's no game I can think of that is like BattleBrothers in this regard. Every other game that I've played, when you have a certain radius of things you are discovering with your vision range, you just see everything within it. Maybe there are like units in camouflage or setting a ambush or trap that you can't see, sure. but major landmarks like camps, towns, legendary locations, those should just be visible at your max of vision range, period. The other big problem with that is, since the discoverability radius is less than vision radius, you can't even keep track of where you have seen camps, right? You can only see where you have explored for terrain. But since your ability to see camps is less than that, and it's a number that's not consistent, which is also a problem, but whatever. It's unintuitive, it's not realistic, it doesn't match any other game I've ever played, and it's frustrating to play with. No reason that should still be in the game. If there are other concerns from that, for example, the player has too much fight selection or camps are too easy to spot, just reduce the number of camps. That's fine. There are so many other solutions you could have where you can normalize vision radius and discoverability radius and make the game better. Veteran players of vanilla BattleBrothers just know, because we learned it once and then memorized it, that there's a whole bunch of two-handed weapons, but not all of them, where you get a plus 20 damage, just added on to your main attack, to the one button, right? The single target attack. Why? One-handed weapons aren't like that. Not all two-handed weapons are like that. Two-handed cleavers. Nope. Two-handed axes. Nope. Just build that into the weapons tooltip. Build it into the weapons like information screen. Make it so that secondary attacks do less damage or whatever, because that's how it is for like one-handed weapons. Like, make it so that the secondary attack is the special one and that the regular primary attack is exactly what it says on the tooltip. I understand that there is at least one exception, being the two-handed axe, where it's not like a normal attack, right? The split man ability hits two body parts and, you know, whatever. But let there just be one exception instead of a whole confusing host of them that can be fixed and should be fixed. Perks that dissuade the player from using the wait command strategically. So, decisive, unstoppable, and second wind are the quintessential examples. One of the important parts of skill expression in BattleBrothers is knowing when to use wait and when not to use wait to manipulate turn order so that you can be before an enemy or you can be after one of your allies because you want to give them a chance to land a stun so that you can use death blow on your Katal, things like that. When you take that away from the player, you're gaining a benefit from removing strategic options, but you're highly incentivizing that. That doesn't seem good. Daggers and the puncture ability specifically should not be a good fighting style, but right now it is, both for the player and the enemy, and there are huge problems on both sides. Let's start with addressing it from the player's perspective. Early game, using the puncture ability should be an economy play. If you're able to use puncture and have it do more damage than your attack with some other weapon, there's a problem. Puncture getting bonus damage from double grip is too much damage. It's simply too much damage. Puncture being reduced in fatigue cost is also a huge problem because it incentivizes you to use that as a primary attack even beyond the early game, not just for economy plays. It's the fastest way to take down a whole host of enemies, and like, it just shouldn't be. It should be an economy-only type of fighting style. Period. Puncture doesn't play well with like combined arms tactics that make BattleBrothers interesting, right? So you use one weapon to strip armor and then another weapon to follow up, right? A warhammer into an arming sword. That sort of coordination between your brothers is what makes BattleBrothers fun. When you can min-max due to planning. Puncture, you just puncture. And then with your other brother, you don't want to attack. You just puncture with them too. And unless you're trying to get armors, that type of fighting style is just not fun. And on the enemy, it's even worse. It's a huge problem. Very often in my most recent campaign, I would see like a big scary enemy, an orc warlord, a hedge knight. I would send my big beefy units to go against the big beefy enemies, and I felt totally safe. Contrast that with fighting against like a desert stalker or a goblin ambusher. these like squishy ranged units who should be doing more damage and be more threatening using their bows than their melee weapons, I found myself being unable to approach them in melee because there's a chance my bro might just die on that turn. And in fact, that did happen. R.I.P. Corvus Corac. I'm a little worried about these two punctures here. No! You're not able to build hit points as easily in Reforged as you are in vanilla. That can be fine, but only if you make it so the enemies don't easily have tools to just bypass your armor completely. And those tools are basically always found on like the enemies that are supposed to be, at least thematically, intuitively, non-threatening to a heavily armored brother. Make other enemies more threatening. That's fine. That's good, in fact. I think the game's a little too easy. But it needs to be difficult in the right ways, and puncture is not it. There are too few defensive perks in general. In vanilla, of the 50 perks that you have available to you, 13 are either mostly or exclusively defensive. Contrast that with the 155, give or take, perks that are in Hardened, and of those, there's like 18 that are defensive, like purely defensive. That is just not enough. Having so few defensive perks means you just build your brothers as like DPS optimizers, which is also kind of an artifact of like Pathfinder not being available. And it's just not that interesting from a gameplay perspective or even a build perspective. You just want to optimize for DPS. You know, you get a tool to reduce fatigue costs, you get a tool to kind of like get AP advantages in some way, either extra AP or make AP efficiency a thing, and then you just try to put out as much damage as possible. It's easy to sort of like tinker with numbers and sort of calculate out what does the most damage. It's much, much more interesting to figure out how to build cohesive defensive packages against the different enemies in the game. Hybrid weapons. I have a whole host of problems with these. First, many of them seem to be hybrid weapons for no particular reason. Why is the ancient sword a sword/dagger? I mean, I would argue that in almost every single case, a hybrid weapon doesn't even make sense. So, intuition's not there, for starters. Secondly, they're just too strong. The hybrid weapons are stronger than their alternatives. Because as soon as you give the player more choices, you can create something that just is stronger because you're able to optimize. So that's sort of inevitable unless you just make them bad enough to not use. So since they're stronger, you want to build around them, and then your brother is locked in to that very specific weapon type. In vanilla, I will very happily take my dedicated spear bro and slap a man splitter on him when I'm going to fight against Ancient Dad. That's just not a thing if you build around hybrid weapons. You have like 6 perks locked into that specific type of weapon. So one of the side effects of that is that finding famed items in the late game is often kind of a letdown. Why? So if you have a brother built around a hybrid weapon and you find a weapon that isn't that specific hybrid weapon, right? If you have a bro built around the Kriegsmaster and you have perks allocated for both swords and cleavers, and then you get just a big old great sword, a great sword of greatness appears to you, and you're just sort of disappointed because you don't have a bro that can use it. So you've got to hire a new bro and make a whole new build just for the weapon. There's no immediate power spike. It doesn't give you that dopamine hit. Conversely, you could have a bro who's built around a greatsword, just a regular greatsword. Let's not get too crazy. And then you get a named Kriegsmaster. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that word right.
Kriegsmesser.
I'm not. You have your greatsword, you find your named Kriegsmaster, and, well, wouldn't it be better if they gained AP when they moved into range with injured enemies? I guess I better hire a new bro to use this weapon. You have to know that all the different fatigue costs apply, And you have to know how the rounding works in BattleBrothers as well. So whenever I would get a new weapon and I'd want to use a hybrid weapon, I would have to like go to a calculator, type in a bunch of numbers to know if I'm hitting a breakpoint, right? This is like calculating increased attack speed in Diablo 2 all over again. I don't want to do that. I don't think anyone should have to do that, especially when you create abominations like polearm axe hammer. Like, it's too much. It's too much. The redesigns in Reforged for different weapons are really good. Weapons have personality now. Swords play off of initiative. Swords make you feel like a mobile swordsman. Cleavers, with gaining AP when moving into range with an injured enemy, feel like the finisher weapon that they are in vanilla. You know, hammers do one huge attack with full force. It's awesome. Maces cause debuffs on the enemy with stuns and dazes and injuries, and axes exist. So the weapons have personalities. Lean into that. The hybrid weapons dilute the personalities that each weapon have been given in the mod already. All right, so now I'm going to talk about some perks that I don't like. And first I'm going to talk about a package. Get your mind out of the gutter. Bullseye, marksmanship, entrenched. Given that not all of your team has access to Pathfinder, the emergent strategy that you're going to want to take in every company you build is, let's make ranged bros. We're going to sit still and just pelt them with arrows or crossbow bolts or even use a sling or throwing axes, whatever, until they come to you. It's fun to figure that out the first time, where you click the button. You do the ranged attack and you say, come at me, bro. Come at me, bro. The entire tactician perk group, available on too few recruits, but is also powerful enough that you always want it, and it should just be removed. I don't like any of them. I don't think they're good for the game. Inspiring Presence, just as a perk in general, is way too powerful. The delta between highborn and lowborn is exacerbated by not just stats, but now also perks, right? Highborn have more perks available to them, so you can build more cohesive builds. And they have all these like exclusive perk groups, like the Noble perk group that has Inspiring Presence. And this perk is way too good. It's way too good, period. All of the Swordmaster perks, all of them, remove them. I don't like them. I don't like them at all. And I played with a whole bunch of them, and I built a bunch of Swordmasters in my most recent playthrough. Exclusive perks for a premium background just rubs me the wrong way. Power like that into premium backgrounds indirectly takes away from the emergent storytelling of building a company of battle-hardened warriors from down on their luck riffraff. It's okay for a few of those highborn to make it into your company, and a lot of the events between like Swordmaster and Apprentice, those events are part of the game and they're part of the game's identity, and making exclusive perk groups onto backgrounds that are already cracked stat-wise is not good for the game. And if you're going to build a mod that is in the spirit of the original, you can't lose that spirit. And exclusive perks for the Swordmaster lose that spirit. So in conclusion, overall, I had fun. I had a ton of fun. Getting a new take on my favorite game, you love to see it. The Hardened submod for Reforged, I would, despite my long list of complaints that I just gave, recommend that you give it a try. I think you'll have fun. I don't think it's perfect. And I don't think that it thinks it's perfect, right? These mods are still works in progress, and I'm hopeful that they will continue to improve. I am planning on doing one more run, a challenge run of sorts, just to test my understanding of the new systems, because I got one more thing brewing, cooking, that I'm thinking about. Some things I want to try out. But despite all that, in its current state, I still personally prefer vanilla BattleBrothers. But that doesn't mean I don't think that Hardened is incapable of dethroning vanilla BattleBrothers. I am hopeful and even optimistic that it will eventually get there. And so, to all of you, wherever you are in the world, make it a good one. Ta-ta.